Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am Vaveao, as introduced by Madam. First, I would like to voice a sincere thank you to the organizing committee of this conference. We have the pleasure of being here because of your kind invitation. Thank you so much. Digital preservation and access of documentary heritage collection listed in the memory of the world. This particular collection is called the German collection. Now, if you are wondering why the documentary heritage collection is called the German collection, then I should first give you a brief history of our beautiful Samoa. Before Samoa made contact with the outside world, our history was not documented on papers. However, it was told and preserved in the memories of generations. The word of mouth was how information was passed from our elders to our young ones. It has been our tradition for hundreds of years. Thank you for the light. Samoa was first sighted by a Dutch navigator in 1722. From then on, Samoa had been exposed to the outside world. More navigators and seafarers followed in the 1700s. Recorded history of Samoa began through documentation of these first sailors as they record accounts of their visits in their personal diaries. Whalers, traders, and beachcombers followed in the late 18th and the early 19th centuries. In 1830, Christianity reached our shores. Formal schools and education was introduced to Samoa, and documentation of the activities of the churches and of the people increased. Pastors and some of the early Europeans at the time made the effort in recording the activities of various events. In the 1880s, 3 foreign powers had interest in our small island. As a result, the island of Samoa was divided. The eastern islands of Samoa was made territory of the United States of America. The western islands, that is us, were made a colony of Germany. The German colonization began in 1900. The administration began creating records. More than hundreds and thousands, more than 400,000 pages of records were created and kept by the German administration. In 1914, the German colonization ended, and straight after the Germans, New Zealand administration began. In 1945, the New Zealand administration ended. Samoa's self-government followed in 1962 and became an independent nation from then on. The collection was safeguarded from the old building that was once a prison built by the German administration back in the time. The collection was then in the custody of the Ministry of Education, Sports and Culture. Before going any further, I must say that the collection itself was carefully numbered and neatly filed. The large compiled book-like files are neatly sewn together. However, through time, the negligence of the collection before it was salvaged and deterioration crept in. Some files are damaged with insects, some files were wet, some files were torn, and some of the files were very brittle. In 2006, a proposal from the Ministry of Education, Sports and Culture seeking funds to microfilm the German administration collection, reconsidered based on the advice of the Archives New Zealand, given the humidity and the situation of the Pacific Islands, which makes it almost impossible to properly store microfilms in our kind of weather. And costing of microfilm equipment if technical problems arise. The Federal Republic of Germany Archives funded and delegated all coordinating responsibilities to the Archives New Zealand. In the implementation relevant trainings for the archives staff of Samoa, the Archives New Zealand then conducted 3 trainings. The first training was the Archives conservation training. The second training is the metadata training. And the third one is digitization itself. Now, the first 2 trainings were conducted by experts from the Archives New Zealand. The third training was conducted by a consultant, a private consultant, that his company deals with digitization, and it's based in New Zealand. The digitization consultant, Andrew Pettingell, provided training for 2 months. The equipments were provided. An installation of standalone digitization workstation took place. Included in this provision were 1, a graphic monitor for accurate assessment of images. 2nd, a graphic computer with appropriate software installed. The 3rd one is a UPS to ensure equipment reliability. 2 Canon 5 with full frame cameras with both 50mm and 35mm prime lenses. A TIS model B-book scanner frame. Those were the digitization equipment that were brought in by the good assistance of the German Republic Archives. And the purpose of providing these equipment, the deal was they go on with the German digitization project using the equipment brought in by the Germans, and afterward they get a copy of digital records from the collection, they get to have a copy, and also the New Zealand archives. That was the agreement. The records of the German administration in Samoa date between approximately 1800, 1880 and 1914. At present, the bulk of the collection is physically divided between Archives New Zealand and MESC Archives, Ministry of Education, Sports and Culture in Samoa. The majority of the records held in Samoa are in good conditions, but due to their age and the climate in Samoa, there was concern over their longevity. There is also a desire to both intellectually unite the German administration records collection and to make this information more accessible. Interest in the collection has also been expressed by the Federal Archives of the Federal Republic of Germany. The need for this project was identified many years ago, while the German administration period records were stored in very bad conditions at old building. Since then, years of negotiations and dialogue took place between Samoa and the Federal Republic of Germany as to the best ways to preserve these records while making them accessible in an international environment, subject to access consideration as specified by the Archives Division of Samoa. After consultation with various parties, it was decided that the most efficient and effective approach was to digitize the records within Samoa. The government of the Federal Republic of Germany undertook to provide funding for the digitization equipment and technical advices, which were facilitated through Archives New Zealand. For this project, it's a joint project by three stakeholders. One is the government of Samoa through the Ministry of Education, Sports and Culture. Another one is the German Republic Archives, and the third one is the Archives New Zealand. So they were all in for something. We get to have the equipment, New Zealand get to have a copy, and so is the Republic Federal Archives of Germany. The work is to be completed within Samoa by the staff at the time. How will these records be digitally preserved? The project objective is to digitize at folio level and to meet international standard for digitization. The entire collection of records from the German administration that are held by the Samoa Archives Division was soon up to be digitized. The other objective of the project is to produce and deliver master copies 24-bit color TIFF for Archives New Zealand and master copies 8-bit grayscale TIFF for Federal Republic of Germany. The idea was to digitize and share the digital format between the three archives. After all, what is the use of archive if it's not accessed, as I heard yesterday, quoted by one of the presenters? Having digital copies available of the collection in Archives New Zealand and Federal Republic of Germany makes it easier for people to access online. More people real access to the information, not like when it wasn't digitized for people to access. It's very hard for people to access when the collection wasn't digitized. If they wanted to access the collection at the time, they had to come to Samoa to access this collection. Files were then followed through the steps. This is the process of digitization in how this project was done. First, it was captured at folio level as a raw file format. Then, later on, it would be processed to deliver a 24-bit TIFF file at 400 dpi. It was also quality controlled, one-to-one checking of the captured images, quality assurance, sampling of completed materials to ensure compliance. Production of derivatives. This was also produced for Samoa to have a copy of this digital records. An 8-bit grayscale TIFF at 400 dpi. JPEG were required as PDF and also PDF version. These formats were left in Samoa for their safekeeping. The final product is then transferred to Archives New Zealand, and then from Archives New Zealand to the German archives. Trainings were offered by Archives employees. Archives New Zealand provided training for the staff of Archives Samoa. And there is a picture of one of the trainers, Mr. Stephen Williams, conducting a conservation training, marking the significance of the paper diversity, which archivists ought to recognize and apply conservation resolutions. Another training was also done by Mr. Ducol from New Zealand Archives. And in his training, he covered the introduction to metadata, the introduction to Dublin Core metadata initiative, creating a unique identifier system, and also a topic on the series documentation. For digitization, Mr. Andrew had his own process on the digitization side, as was previously told. Mr. Andrew stayed in Samoa for 2 months so that the staff of the Archives of Samoa could be familiarized with the process of digitization. Because at the time of this project, the number of the Archives Samoa staff was 3. So Mr. Andrew stayed behind so that these 3 staff can absorb more learning from Mr. Andrew on his digitization part. Presently, the digital storage devices that we're using derives ranging from 1 terabyte to 1.5 terabyte storage capacities. These were the storage we used at the time of this project. Since we cannot afford, the local budget cannot afford any other storage than to purchase those terabytes of hard drives. So the storage devices were sufficient at the time, and as the project progressed, we have learned that the capacity of these drives ran out, and it was soon filled, and it caused a problem to the PC overload, and caused the breakdown of the equipment, and so there was a delay in the project. A more long-term solution would be acquiring a server with much more storage volumes, capacity, as well as reliability to store the digitized collection. There was a stage where there was a significant delay of the project caused by the slowing down of PC due to overfilled of drives. The limited time frame that was given to this project can be summarized as it was unrealistic in terms of the project, and the actions of this project was very new to Samoa, and the time frame was planned from the side of the consultant. He can capture up to 90,000 images for 3 months. But for an amateur digitization officer to reach his potential is unrealistic. So that caused a delay of the project. And so therefore we had to request for an extension of the project. So they gave us 2 more years to complete that project. The language, there was also a language barrier, language difficulties. It was discovered during the process of item listing that most of the files in German records collection is in the German language. The English translation of files, of file titles by former Principal Archives Miss Ulrike Hertel, who was a German national, which was why the translation was not considered a problem at that time until she retired. The English titles, however, were translated straight from a German list of file titles. The titles therefore do not necessarily represent the details and contents of a particular file. So the English titles are only a general reference to indicate the type of content in each record. There is a need to add metadata describing each particular file. However, this cannot be satisfied due to language barrier. File description is one of the most important components on the item listing process. This could help future academics and researchers who seek references and conduct researches from the archives. Providing such description of the file would make research much easier and efficient. It will also allow archive staff to categorize, classify records according to international archive standards. It is always obvious that Pacific Island archives never have the same resources, materials, facilities, etc., etc., and the list goes on. As those enjoyed by their archives colleagues in developed countries, as is the case experienced by Samoa. We have very limited resources and limited funding from our local budgets, and as such, we heavily rely on financial assistance and support from funding agencies and others to develop, improve our facilities. We also rely on the technical assistance from our overseas counterparts, as digitization is a new field for Samoa. In this particular case, the digitization process in Samoa involves disbanding, conserving, preservation, file sorting, and boxing, file numbering, item listing, and more. However, with this and other developed countries, specific sections are responsible for each of these particular activities, whereas in Samoa, one staff is responsible for a range of duties. There you see, those are the equipment provided by the German archives to digitize the German collection. And most of the time, if it breaks down, Mr. Andrew has to come all the way from New Zealand because our IT staff is reluctant to fix it because they're not familiar with the system used. So that is the experience of Samoa on a project such as digitizing records to be in digital form and in digital format. And for that, thank you for your participation so far. Sorry for